We often talk about the sacrifices needed to raise kids, but there's a part of the conversation that's often missing. It's the long journey to try for a child. Beyond medical intervention, how can workplaces better support couples who want to be parents? Welcome back to the Work It podcast. My name is Nat. Now, Singapore's total fertility rate hit a record low last year. While there's a national conversation ongoing trying to encourage people to have kids, I want to unpack the struggles some people are facing with fertility and parenthood, and more importantly, how workplaces can better support those who want to be parents. Joining me on the Work It couch are Minister Indranee Rajah, who oversees the Marriage and Parenthood portfolio in the Prime Minister's Office.
Hi everyone.
Shawn Huang, Senior Parliamentary Secretary for Finance and Education.
Hi everyone.
And Lin Shumin, President of Fertility Support Singapore.
Hi everyone.
Thank you guys for coming to the Work It podcast.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start with you, Minister Indranee. In Parliament, you called for a society-wide reset on views about marriage and parenthood. Now, Singapore has long relied on financial support measures like baby bonus. So what does this reset involve beyond just more money coming in?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that question because marriage and parenthood is not only about the financial aspect. The financial part is very important, but it's more than that. It's about the values, the attitudes, and the mindset. And globally, I think, especially in cities, parents are under stress. There is competition for resources. Time is a big factor. So I think that we need to do two things. And that's what the work group is that's the way the work group is approaching it. One, there's the policy stuff. And government is definitely looking at that. And that entails a whole range. It could be, more financial support. We know that parents are looking to see whether there's a possibility of childcare leave. They've asked us to look at that. There's also housing, because if you want to set up a family, you need to have housing early. Right. So the policy pieces we will look at. But actually, this is, marriage and parenthood is very personal. It's something that involves attitudes, mindsets, and that is really the realm of society as a whole. So a big part of this would be, what can we in society do as corporates, as employers, as supervisors, as neighbors, as friends? So I think that's the approach that we're taking, right. Whole of nation approach.
Okay, so aside from the financial bit, it's about attitudes, mindset, and the values that each of us have, right? And so what does this look like in the ideal successful scenario of this?
In an ideal successful scenario, what I would hope is that firstly, Singaporeans will want to and be able to find life partners. That's one. Two, as and when they do, to have children, to aspire to have children and to, be happy to have children. Three, that they have supportive employers, supportive family members, supportive community. And four, that they have the time for family. Time is actually a crucial currency. I've spoken about that before in Parliament, because at work, throughout the 2000s and the last 20 years, we were expected to work 24/7. But how to work 24/7 and have a successful marriage and look after your kids? I would really hope for a back to basics where you work hard, but there's time to go home to have dinner with your family. And of course, you can get on the computer and do some more work after that or have Zoom calls, but at least have dinner with your family. We used to have the once in a year have dinner with family, but that doesn't really cut
once
it.
In a year is not enough.
No, it's not enough. So hopefully dinner with family, hopefully not having to go back to the office on weekends. People can still clear stuff during the weekends if they want, but at least weekends is for family. And when you're on leave, no texts and emails as far as possible.
Yeah.
That's what success would look like.
We've talked about that before, on the Work It podcast, when you're on leave, what kind of boundaries do you draw? But is that really it? Like, it comes from the workplace? It's when people are away from work, you respect their time away? Is that the number one thing that needs to change?
I think that the number one thing that needs to change is how we look at the workplace and the workplace norms.
Right.
Now, if you're being employed, the key thing obviously is company has certain goals, business has certain goals that need to be achieved. But there are many ways in which you can achieve those goals, which means that we have to look at work perhaps a little bit differently. In some sectors, you can do work from home. In others, you can't if you're frontline. But every sector can certainly do a review of their work processes to see how they can align their work goals with family life balance.
Right. So maybe, Shawn, I can bring you into the conversation here. You are part of the Minister's Work Group. How will you make sure that these findings that have been revealed actually get acted on and don't just end up as part of a report?
One of the recent frameworks that we've built is really the tripartite guidelines for flexible work arrangement. And in more recent times really helped to shape the norms and expectations on how flexible work arrangements requests are being done. So now we have deeper conversations between employers and employees on how to make those requests and how to use those requests. And then for employers and supervisors as well, on how they can then reasonably consider those requests to ensure that the business continues to be competitive, but yet being able to support the employees' requests. So TAFEP has also come in as well, including NTUC, providing much support to the employers and employees.
Okay.
So that's where we try to push.
Right.
Can I just jump in here?
For sure, yeah.
I think one of the most important players or persons in this whole scenario is the team leader or the line supervisor. Because this is the person who's going to approve your flexible work arrangement or approve your leave requirement, right? And some of the reports that have been coming out that we see, people say they are hesitant to ask for flexible work arrangement, hesitant to apply for paternity leave, hesitant to apply for shared parental leave even though it's there, because they are subtly discouraged from doing so.
Because of the optics of
not just optics. I mean, all it needs for a team leader or line supervisor is to say, are you sure you really want to ask for this? You don't have to say more, right?
Yeah.
The signal is there. So I think we've got to do two things. The employee has to reassure the team leader, supervisor that, look, before I go on leave or before I take time off, I've made arrangements to cover it, right? This is what I've done, or this is how I've handed over, this is how I've briefed whoever's covering for me, or I'm only away for half a day, don't worry about it, it'll get sorted. But the team leader, line supervisor should be open to this and willing to think about how can we as a team achieve the goals and still let this person have that time off for family, rather than saying, are you sure you really want to take time off, or this will affect your promotion, which it should not be doing if you have a good HR system.
Right. But this is where, you talked about values and mindset and attitudes, right? And these are the things that I feel are the hardest to change in a workplace. How do you actually make sure that it's not just telling them, setting new rules, but actually changing minds and hearts in the workplace?
I lead a team of 5 lawyers, 2 trainees and secretaries. I actually see it as a more efficient way to extract maximum value from your team members in a way that is sustainable for them. How I find a balance is you have to respect and you have to trust that they will do the work when they need to do the work. When they say, I will take this morning off, but I'm going to show up in the afternoon and it's going to be done anyway, there needs to be a level of trust that they're going to show up and they're going to do that. As a team leader, it also makes more sense because I always think of it as, rather than having someone sit at the desk for 10 hours and be of, let's say, a 50 to 60% efficiency, better that they are not only at the desk for 70% because 30% they need to bring the parents to the hospital or something. But when they are there for the 70%, they are all the more focused, committed, they are producing better work because they are no longer worrying about that at the back of their minds. Even if you force them there to be there for the whole 10 hours, that's going to affect their productivity because those concerns, they never go away.
So it's education, It's making sure that team leads understand that this is not just for the employees' benefit, but it's for their benefit as well, for the organization's benefit.
It's for everyone's benefit.
Okay.
That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, it's not just education, it's values. Do you value family? Because if you value family, and if you're a team leader, your own family should matter as well, then you will find a way to prioritize that. And if you value your business and your work, you'll also find a way to get those goals done. So that the key thing, and this is an important skill set, is how do you align the work goals with the family goals. But right now, I think it's weighted much more on the work goals and slightly less so on the family goals, simply because of the way we're driven. And that's the reset that needs to take place. It's a mental model that needs to be readjusted. And once you do that, and once you adjust your mental frame, I think the things will start to flow from that.
Right. But when it comes to values, right, and I'm speaking as what they call a dink, double income, no kids, I'm married, me and my wife. Yeah, for now, my values as a dink are very different from the values of a parent in the workplace. So how do we reconcile these different priorities? Like me and my wife, I'm not going to say like, I need more time off to spend with her because she's working as well. So while she's busy, I'm busy, and then we get together at night and we go out on dates and we are able to spend time together. But if it's gonna compare with a parent's needs, their kids get out of school earlier, they have medical appointments to go through, they have living things to care for, right? So how do you reconcile these, different priorities, different values, and how do you get them to align?
As we grow up and as we pursue our career aspirations, family commitments and life phases continue to change as well. And each of them have competing obligations and commitments. And that's where the values of respect, like what was being said, and kindness on thinking what is needed on the employee side and better support them in their career transitions. And that's why we always focus on flexible work arrangements, because then there's equity between different employees. Some have caregiving needs, some needs to care for a new infant, some may have medical issues that need to take some time off. And flexible work arrangement really deepens that conversation. And as we talk about, it's not just about being at the desk or being at work, but how do we better determine outcome-based productivity and focus on that objective, on how employers and employees and supervisors can have a conversation to ensure that businesses continue to be competitive, but yet the employees are fulfilled as well, to make sure that their personal commitments and family commitments are also achieved.
No, and also just because both of you married, have no kids, doesn't mean that you don't need time. Young parents who have children may need time to look after the children. Others may need to look after their parents. But if you are, a married couple, no kids, you still need time for each other. You still need time to invest in relationship, redecorate the house,
Right.
Cook dinner together,
Yeah.
do stuff together, because that's what a relationship's all about, right?
I was going to say, after work, what I do is I go back, I have dinner with my two children, I catch up on their homework, their 听写, their spelling. But the commonality is we are both focusing and prioritizing and spending time with our family. And that is the same, and it is universal. So you shouldn't think that it's so different. And the real point is, just as you can set aside time with your wife, regular time, meaningful time together, so too will you be able to set aside time with your family.
It's just what we're doing in our time away
and
from work.
it's not very different at all. That's what I want to tell you.
Okay.
So have a kid. Yeah.
Well, you're talking to half of the decision makers here. So,
Relay the message, relay the message.
but I do want to talk about a group that we might not have discussed in depth. It's those who struggle with infertility, right? Shumin, I understand that your journey to becoming a mom wasn't easy. You went through IVF at 29, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And in our conversations about trying to get people to have babies and raise our nation's total fertility rate, what else are we missing here in helping this group find solutions?
What we think is missing is what I call fertility literacy.
Okay.
When you know what the process entails in the workplace space, that helps the employers to understand what the employees need. Last year we've launched a workplace guide, and since then, we've rolled out some training sessions in the companies. And we always start with, okay, this is what infertility is, this is what IVF is, this is what IUI is, because still today, many people don't know. Many people don't know that you need every other day, you need to go to the clinic to jab yourself. And the most well-meaning of employers, if they don't know the process, it's limited what they can do. So one reason for that. The second reason for fertility literacy is it changes the mindset, it changes the value. When you understand the process and the difficulties, it helps to cut away at the stigma that still surrounds infertility.
Right.
We did a survey of our members and of the community last year, and the number that came out was 35% still don't even tell their workplace that that they are facing infertility issues. The reality is that a lot of people don't speak up, and a lot of people don't know. And if you don't know, you can't really support people. Right. And this one I'm directing as you, the 32-year-old dink. Testing is very important. We see so many couples, they meet their loved ones, the right partner, a bit later in life. Also, they defer the having a child by a few years because you want to stabilize in your career. So gone are the days where 27, 28 you would have kids. By the time you reach 34, 35, there is a steep drop in fertility at about 35 and then again at about 40. Usually to identify infertility, you need to try for some period, 6 months or 1 year before you go and see a doctor. Now that's all time lost if you have a medical problem that decreases your chances so significantly that no matter how hard you try, you're not going to have a kid. So if you have fertility literacy, if you get yourself checked early, you can save that time, and time is everything in this process. And that's why I think Min Rajah is absolutely right in saying it's the team leader that makes all the difference. At the moment when someone gathers the courage, musters the courage to tell the boss, I'm doing this, at that moment, what is your reaction? Is your reaction, sure, we'll support you? Or is your reaction hesitation or something that, reflects, are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
You're going to really be causing me trouble, because that speaks to the real heart and the real response, and it's these reactions that are going to filter down and create the environment in the team, I think.
When we had our focus group discussions on fertility, I was actually quite taken aback to find out that a number of the participants who were undergoing fertility treatment did not tell their employers the reason for the need, why they needed time off. In fact, one or two were just absolutely terrified of letting their employers know they were working for startups because they were afraid they would be discriminated against or people would not understand. So I think one important starting point right now is if you're a company or an employer, and I'm not talking about just the big MNCs, I'm talking about every SME out there also. Do you have an HR policy that deals with fertility? Everybody's got HR policy that deals with maternity. And now, of course, paternity leave and so on. So maternity leave is well understood. But fertility, not so much talked about or even thought about. When we talk about whole society approach, first thing all companies and employers can do is ask, do you have a fertility policy?
Right.
And if you don't, it might be good to look at one. And an excellent starting place is Fertility SG's, you've produced a guidebook for employers on what are the series of things that you can do or how you can help. And it's, it's simple, it's clear. Is it available on your website?
Yes, it's available on the website.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's one. Then two, if you're a team leader, you need to understand a little bit about what's involved and realize that if the woman is undergoing the treatment, actually the husband may also need to be there for support.
Yeah, I was about to ask, is this all for my wife, or am I going to have to go as well?
Well, think about it, because it's a fairly stressful process.
Yeah.
And technically, it doesn't need somebody else to be there, but emotionally, would it help to have the support of your spouse with you, I would say yes. And the other thing to remember is that it's not just the women. The fertility issue may be with the male as well. So don't discount that fact, and that is part of fertility education, being willing to have that checked and see whether that's the issue.
But for some people, if they don't have these policies in place, or their policies at their workplaces are lacking in some regard, they might run out of sick leave to be able to go for these treatments, go for these checkups, right? So beyond just increasing the number of days, how can workplaces also better support and accommodate to these couples who have to go for these infertility checkups, to go for fertility treatment?
One very simple thing is flexible work arrangements, because you may not need the entire day off. So right now, I think the approach in workplaces is a bit binary. You're sick or you're not sick.
Yeah.
But fertility treatment is you're not sick as such, but you do need time out for a medical intervention, which does not take that long, but can be tiring and emotionally stressful. And if the workplace can cater for that, whether it's 1 hour, 2 hours, I think make a big difference. But yeah, I'm sure that Lin Shumin can jump in.
Yeah, we can go beyond for flexible work arrangements. It's not only working from home, but it's also about flexible time. It's about flexible load. So employers can start having those conversations to meet their needs.
You want to create a workplace where an employee feels comfortable to ask and talk about it. And the employer or the team leader, and I keep coming back to the team leaders and the line supervisors, because these are the key ones, right, is willing to find out more, understand the issue, and to be flexible with it.
Right. Now, Minister, you touched on this a little bit earlier, like some parents, particularly mothers, being worried about their progression in the workplace, especially if they were to announce that they are going to start a family. So I want to ask the three of you, while peers without caregiving responsibilities continue to progress, and maybe some workers are thinking like, should I start a family now while I'm supposed to be in the in my period of growth, in my period of achieving and going beyond? Is this just going to be a reality that we have to accept?
If you want to be realistic about it, there are only 24 hours in a day, right? There's only so much that you can do within that time, and you have to juggle a lot of things. So if you have to take time out to have a child or to have maternity leave or whatever, you cannot expect that you'll be exactly the same as your peers in the workplace who have been working and continuing to advance during that period.
Right.
So that's just factual reality of life. But if you have a workplace which says that, yes, this is one of the things that you have to do to take time out, but in order for you to come back, we have a program that lets you come back in stages. That may be one model. Or we have a program that when you come back, we will help you to ramp up, catch up for some of the lost time. And yes, you may not be promoted exactly the same time as your peers or your colleagues, but we will just pick up where you left off. And your upward trajectory can continue, and we'll do what we can to support you, and make sure that you're able to A, catch up, B, have flexible work arrangements, and you show me your value to the company. If you can have that kind of environment, I think it will make a big difference. But it requires progressive HR policies.
Right.
The easier thing is to do is just to say, oh, okay, because this person's going to be away, why don't we just get somebody else? But each individual has a lot to contribute. And if you want loyalty to the company, and you want people to feel that I have a sense of fulfillment here and I have a career here, then I think HR policy needs to be relooked at and redesigned.
Right.
It's something that I struggled with. So I miscarried my first child. After being so happy, finally telling the grandparents, I miscarried the first child. And so the doctor told me that I had to take a year off. And my boss was fantastic. I told him on Tuesday, I said, look, my doctor says that I need to take a year off. I'm getting my blood test results on whether I'm pregnant on Thursday. And he said, without skipping a beat, he said, you take the time you need. So on Thursday I said, oh my gosh, it's positive. I said, I'm gone tomorrow and I'm gone for 9 months. And he said, absolutely. But I struggled with it, you know. I think it requires acceptance on a person's part that your path is just going to be a little different. You're going to take a little detour. So the way I came around to thinking about it is, I've always been moving in the same direction. And as long as you keep on that course, it's better to keep on the course than to drop off entirely. As long as I'm keeping on that course, and yes, I made a little detour, but that little detour has enriched my life. And the reality is that no matter what it is, no matter what you choose, you know, like for me, it's my children. For people, it might be a passion, it might be a hobby. Whatever sustains you as a person outside of think, you have to balance it no matter what, you know. So as long as you keep on the same course in the right direction, it's okay if you take a little detour, if you are a bit slower as compared to, you know, your peers. And the important thing is you have to tell yourself, and that's fine. That I think is a mindset shift. So I think the mindset shift is right, but it has to be two ways, not just at the HR, but also.
But also you took that detour, but and so you gave up a little bit on the work side during that period. But did you gain something?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is you're not losing, you're also gaining.
Right.
And of course, now that you're back, I'm assuming that you're able to do lots of billable work, yeah, which is what your employer wanted you back for. And rightly so.
Employer is watching this.
And in fact, we recognize those challenges in getting back onto the ramp as well, in getting back into work. That's why the ministry has also been very supportive in getting more programs out. For example, the Skills Future Level Up programs, the career conversion programs, or the mid-career pathways program as well, so that folks who are getting on the detour could get back on the on-ramp very quickly and reduce those obstacles.
Right. So ensuring that when people come back to work, they can drop in and sure they missed. They were away for some time, but you're able to get them on track as soon as possible, as soon as they want to be there.
Exactly.
Right.
Getting them confident, getting more competent as well.
When we're talking about line managers, team leaders showing empathy and flexibility, we have to understand that their priorities at the end of the day are still their KPIs. So is there going to be clearer, enforceable guidelines to ensure that there's consistency in, rather than leaving things to the individual employer, individual team leaders to make decisions?
Yeah. So every SME, every employer and supervisor and line managers face different problems and issues, and it's really different. Like what I mentioned, it's a not one-size-fits-all program.
Right.
And the most important part is having those conversations, is getting through the guidelines on how employees can make those requests and how employers assess those requests as well. You mentioned about the KPIs, but those are short-term KPIs. If you're looking from an institution or a corporate perspective, you want to look into long-term longevity and sustainability of the businesses. How do you really integrate employees throughout? Because if you do not have a more conducive and more inclusive workplace, then you won't be able to retain those talent.
Right.
And then there'll be a lot of churn. And once you have churn, you will not be competitive in the long term.
When we're asking for time away from work, how do I go about asking and making sure that I don't get iced at work, or I'm not being deprioritized for a promotion just because I'm asking for these things?
So based on the guidelines, there should be a HR process that's really involved, where there is a platform where you can submit those requests formally and have a formal conversation with your employers or your supervisors. And then there's a certain time response, which is a minimum of a maximum of 2 months, for them to consider the request and reply. And if the workers have any issues, they can always seek advice from NTUC or even from TAFED. Right. And then they can help to mediate and have deeper conversations and engagements on that.
How do we make sure that the policies are practiced as they're intended to be practiced?
So if it's not practiced or they don't go through that, you can actually approach TAFED.
Okay.
That's right.
And what are the, okay, like let's say I approach TAFEP, right? Like what's going on there? Am I just reporting and then like, okay.
No, so TAFEP will then investigate and look further into whether within the company those HR processes are in place for that conversation to occur, and whether from the employer side, whether those requests were taken seriously and were the requests reasonable.
Right.
This is the current state of play today, but part of what the work group is doing is to look to see how we can encourage, nudge, incentivize, poke the employers to, maybe look at this issue a lot more seriously and more in depth. Because at the end of the day, a lot of it really depends on how it's rolled out in the workplace. And your original question, which was, what would the government be doing about this, or what guidelines? The government can do quite a bit, but there's only so much, because the other part of it is mindsets, it's attitudes, it's your work culture, your work philosophy. So my call out in this part of the reset work is to ask every employer to come on board on this, because it is a national mission. And I firmly believe that every single company and every single sole proprietorship who is employing people can do something within your organization, within your mission, and within your means. And one very simple thing is just create the conditions to have a conversation with your employees. Actually, something just simple as sitting down with your employees and saying, how can we improve our HR processes?
Right.
It already makes a big difference, because that exchange of ideas will throw up things to be thought about, possible improvements to put in place, and everybody benefits from that. So changing mindsets begins with the individual and the organization.
Right, it begins with a conversation.
Yes.
Right. Shumin, I want to bring you in because I noticed that you smiled earlier when we were talking about the guidelines. Do you find it viable? I want to get your thoughts on the reality on the ground.
On his guidelines or my guidelines?
Well, hopefully you agree with your own guidebook, but with the guidelines that Shawn mentioned earlier.
No, I was smiling. I was smiling because I was thinking what you wanted to ask him is, so what if the employer isn't doing that? What do you do? No, I think seriously though, I think that the infrastructure, from my fertility perspective, the infrastructure for people to get the little bit of time that they need off to attend to the fertility treatments, the infrastructure is already there. Because of the flexible work arrangement. I think it's more a matter of letting people know and letting people put two and two together. From my point of view, it's also helping the couples who are going through treatment to pluck up the courage to tell the team leader. That one is not easy, because you think there's stigma. And we've got some of the support groups I had, the ladies would say, my boss is a guy. It's very hard for me to tell my guy, my male boss, that, I'm going through treatment. We just don't have that relationship. And the men, they want to be there because, there's an imbalance in the infertility treatment, because everything is on the woman. The woman is taking the jabs, the woman is getting poked, the woman is going under GA. The men want to play their part, but there's only so much they can do. And what can they do? They can show up by being present. But it's hard for them to say, my wife is going, for treatment, so I'm going to need time off. And there have been, from our responses from the community, there's not always understanding there. The immediate reaction is, "Was your wife what? Why do you have to go?" So I think, but I think that also, again, the infrastructure is there. So it's first letting people know that it's there, and then, okay, now please pluck up the courage and use it, and it really just all goes back to fertility literacy, letting people know about it and be more accepting of it.
So that's another measurable shift I would like to be able to achieve, which is where going for fertility treatment or raising the issue of fertility treatment in the workplace becomes a normal thing well, normal in the sense that it's not an extraordinary ask.
Right.
It's not so different from your having to go for some other medical interventions. I hesitate to use the word treatment because it's not an illness per se, but you do need to go and have a medical intervention, and it should be an ask in the ordinary course of things, and to remove the stigma from that.
I've known of some couples, some aspiring parents, right, who have sought alternative paths to fertility like traditional Chinese medicine alongside their conventional Western treatment or Western medical intervention, right? So how can workplaces better acknowledge and support these different choices, or should they even be supporting these different choices?
You know, this one I hesitate because there's a really wide range, and there's a huge range of things that people will do, because wanting to have a kid is such a visceral instinct. People will do a lot of things. So at one end of the spectrum, you have TCM treatment, seeing your TCM. That I would suspect would be more understandable. On the other hand, you have people, and you know, it's just different beliefs. You have people visiting fortune tellers. You have people, you know, flying to Bangkok to touch certain statues, and or going to temples. A very common one is people going to temples to collect red eggs left by people who have conceived. So I think there is a spectrum. One of the criteria is when you make the request, is it a reasonable request? And that, I think, has to be determined on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
Also, I mean, just applying a very common sense approach. The reason why you need time off of fertility treatments because it's a medical procedure. But for TCM, actually quite a lot of it also involves taking certain herbs or doing certain things. You don't need flexible work arrangements for that.
Right.
You can do it during lunch hour. It's fine. Or you can do it at
And
home.
I'm assuming flexible work arrangements don't involve me flying to Bangkok and like
Yes,
touching
that's
something.
but for that one, there's no reason why you cannot do it during your normal leave.
Right.
Take annual leave, and whilst you're there, you know,
Touch the statue.
yeah. So there's a whole spectrum, and one has to apply, I think, a healthy dose of common sense to some of this.
We've been talking a lot about the different policies or different accommodations that we hope that businesses will make, or we're trying to ensure that businesses make for couples who want to become parents. But we do need to acknowledge that all of this will come at a cost for the business as well, right? As of April, Minister, shared parental leave has increased up to 10 weeks from previously 6 weeks. So what are the employers' biggest struggles for implementation of these extended leave policies?
Well, when we had conversations with SNEF and the employers prior to announcement and implementation, I think they had two key asks. One was give sufficient notice. Because if you have sufficient notice, then you can make the arrangements to cover, right? And the second, I think, was really the cost of it. So the cost of it, the government said we pick up. This is government paid shared parental leave, so they don't have to worry so much about that. And in fact, if you think about it, since we're covering the cost of that employee with the money that has been the employer retains, you can use that to either hire somebody else for the period, or if you're asking colleagues to cover, you pay them more during that period. I mean, I would ask the employers to be open-minded about this, because now government is picking up the tab for that 10 weeks. That means you have the money that you otherwise would have paid out to that employee. And you've got a choice, right? One, you can keep it all to yourself, or you can disburse it to those who are covering the work, or use it to hire somebody else. And that really depends on a progressive employer really thinking about it,
Right.
how to make this work. And the notice provisions, I think, are important, and that's for puts the onus on the employee to give sufficient notice, because from an employer perspective, they also have work goals, so the employee must help with that by helping your employer to be able to enable you to go on leave.
For SMEs with tighter resources, right? We're not talking about MNCs or larger firms, and often SMEs also, they have smaller teams. How can they realistically keep pace while making sure that they do accommodate those couples who work for them who want to try to become parents?
Many of the SMEs have fed back that either they have resource constraints or they have business continuity issues. But to be fair, the SMEs, we also see a very wide spectrum of those who say that they face challenges and those who have made organizational change and enhance their capabilities to make sure that flexible work arrangement and these continuities they continue to be competitive. So in fact, we have many SMEs who are leading the forefront in terms of flexible work arrangement and making these accommodations and championing them as well. So I highly encourage some of these SMEs who are facing problems to maybe have dialogues and find out who are those SMEs and have deeper conversations on how they make business change that will be sustainable and more productive in the future as well.
How can organizations ensure that these policies feel fair to everyone across the organization? Not just to the parents, not just parents-to-be, not just to the dinks like me, or to those who are single even. How can we go about doing that? Maybe Shawn, you can answer this.
For me, one of the key strategies is really having a very more robust flexible work arrangement. Because with a flexible work arrangement, you are able to then adapt to the needs and transitions of the entire career timeline. Each of us will face different challenges each time. Different obligations continue to evolve and transform. And flexible work arrangement will allow the business to evolve together with their employees to make something meaningful so that they are competitive, but yet their employees will be able to meet their personal commitments as well.
I feel like we've spent a lot of time talking about how we want to allow these couples who want to embark on this journey towards parenthood to do so without forfeiting their jobs, forfeiting their career trajectories as well. If one of these parents-to-be were here in the studio today, I want to ask the three of you for one line that you have to say to them. Minister, maybe we start with you. Is there something you would want to tell these aspiring parents?
What I'd like to tell aspiring parents is this. Government will do everything we can to support you. What we need you to do is to have conversations with your employers and also understand that, yes, you may have to take some time out along the way, but there is a lot to be gained, and we'll do our best to get you back on the trajectory. So don't, in an ideal world, what we would hope is that time out is not seen as a loss or a sacrifice. It is seen as a detour, as Shumin puts it, a detour in which you gain something priceless and invaluable, which is your family, and it still allows you to get back onto the path that you wanted.
All right. Shumin?
In our discussions, in our support groups, people also say, other than the availability of leave, they also feel bad. They feel bad having to take time off. They feel bad having to impose on their team members. Some people shared that. So I remember when I was going through it and I was asking one of my seniors, I said, I'm causing my team leader so much trouble. I said, should I just stop work altogether for a while? And she, in her wisdom, she told me, don't be stupid lah. 70% of you is better than 0% of you. And so what I would tell someone on the journey now is just stay the course. It's true, stay the course. Maybe the road looks a bit different from what you expected, but everyone runs the race differently.
I'll tell the aspiring parents that that they are not alone in this together. There is a very supportive ecosystem, and will continue to evolve and support them in their very important life journey.
All right. Three of you, thank you so much for coming down to the Work It podcast. And that's it for this episode of Work It. But now I have a question for all of you. If you were trying to start your own family, what kind of support would you want from your workplace? Share your thoughts with us at cnapodcast@mediacorp.com.sg or wherever you find the Work It podcast. My name's Nat, and remember, where you work shouldn't get in the way of starting a family.